I'm Christopher Horrocks. I'm a technologist at the University of Pennsylvania, and this is Virtual Intelligence, a series about artificial intelligence, accountability, and the human consequences of systems that don't know true from false and right from wrong. I argue that contemporary AI occupies a category we don't have good language for yet. Not a simple tool, not a thinking mind, but something in between that demands its own name. This episode is the Carwash test, virtual intelligence in action. There's a question that has been circulating on Reddit as both a reasoning test and a running joke. It goes like this: my car is dirty. The car wash is 100 feet away. Should I walk or drive? I want to sit with that for a moment before I tell you how various AI systems answered it, because the question is doing something slightly unusual. At first glance, it looks like a question about distance, and about whether 100 feet warrants getting into a car. That's the misdirection. The question is really about the logical object of the problem, not the person's location relative to the car wash, but the cars. Walking to the car wash accomplishes nothing. The car doesn't clean itself. The correct answer is drive. Any adult who has ever been to a car wash would reach it in about 200 milliseconds. I ran that question through 27 configurations of 12 AI systems in March 2026. Each system got the prompt cold in a fresh session with no prior context. 7 passed. 11 were correct, but 2 verbose to fully credit. 9 failed outright. So let me describe what failure looks like. ChatGPT 5.3, running on OpenAI Plus with no extended thinking, began its answer with a single word: drive. Then it reasoned its way to the opposite conclusion. Here's what it said. Drive. At 100 feet, you're operating in the awkward middle zone. Too far to justify the engine start-stop cycle as necessary, but close enough that walking is simpler, faster, and avoids the whole ignition parking maneuver. Practically, walking time 20 to 30 seconds. Driving time, start, shift, move, stop, longer, plus unnecessary wear. Unless there's some constraint, mobility, weather, steep incline, walking is the more efficient choice. The system opened with the correct answer. Then it contradicted its first word and apparently didn't notice. The response was fluent, well-structured, and organized into bullet points. It also recommended you walk to a car wash and leave your dirty car behind. This is not a quirk. It is an instance of the failure mode this test was designed to expose. The system produced language optimized for plausibility at each local step without tracking the constraint that made the answer obvious. The car needs to be at the car wash. Once the system pivoted to analyzing 100 feet as a travel decision, the car's dirty condition became background noise. The logical object drifted, while the pros stayed confident. Meta AI, running Llama 4 in fast mode, advised walking because, and I'm quoting, it's a very short distance. In thinking mode, after nearly 10 seconds of visible deliberation, it reached the same conclusion and suggested I get some fresh air. Neither version mentioned the car again after the first sentence. ChatGPT 5.4, in extended thinking mode, delivered the shortest failure in the entire set. Here's the complete response. Walk. If the car wash is 100 feet away, driving to clean the car is the kind of thing future archaeologists would cite as evidence of civilizational decline. Pithy, but dead wrong. Without extended thinking, the same model said, walk. Driving 100 feet to wash a dirty car solves one problem by briefly being the problem. 2 different configurations, same wrong answer, same confident tone. Now, Copilot with GPT 5.2 in Think Deeper mode produced the most elaborate wrong answer in the entire set, and I want to walk you through it because it's a small masterpiece of misdirected effort. It opened by confirming it had checked my Microsoft 365 data for anything relevant to the word Carwash. No results. It then provided a detailed breakdown of why walking wins most of the time, complete with bolded headers, a 4-item bullet list, a rule of thumb, a safety checklist, and a closing question asking me what type of car wash it was. Reasoning completed in 4 steps. The answer was wrong in all 4. It told me, walk. For 100 feet, walking is almost always the better move. Then it listed reasons. It avoids a cold start, it's less hassle, it's safer and simpler. Under when driving makes more sense, it buried the correct insight, that the car needs to physically enter the wash queue inside a list of edge cases as though the central point of the problem were a corner case. Copilot running GPT 5.2 in quick mode was worse. Copilot running GPT 5.2 in quick mode was worse. It told me walking was the answer, and then it invented a reason. Driving a dirty car to a car wash, it said, adds more dirt and defeats the point. That's not an inference. That's a hallucination dressed up as common sense. Copilot with GPT 5.3, the quick mode, converted the distance of 100 feet into meters, into miles, and into what it called one moderately committed hallway. It produced a decision table. Under the heading Risk of Irony, it gave driving a rating of extremely high. Its recommendation, walk. I'll come back to that particular response because it did something worth discussing. Let me stay with the failures for a moment longer. Mistral 3, a French AI system from the company Lechette, offered a particularly instructive case. In its think mode, its extended reasoning configuration, it deliberated for 1 second and produced walk. It's just 100 feet. Clean, confident, wrong. The thinking mode activated the dominant inference, short distance therefore walk, and locked it in rather than checking it against the logical object. This is not the same failure as ChatGPT, which drifted mid-response while producing fluent prose. Mistral Think achieved premature closure. The same deliberation sealed the mistake rather than catching it. Mistral Fast failed the same way. Same wrong answer, same reasoning. Mistral Research, the platform's retrieval augmented mode, was something else entirely. It deployed 55 resources and roughly 1,200 words on a question with a 200 millisecond answer. It produced a comparative table and a visually arresting progress bar. It did reach the correct conclusion eventually. The system could not distinguish a retrieval problem from a constraint problem, and the result is a small monument to misdirected diligence. So, what do these failures share? A steel-manned objection would go like this. The car wash test is too simple to be meaningful. Sophisticated language models handle genuinely complex reasoning tasks that far exceed anything a one-sentence question about a dirty car requires. Failing this tells us nothing about their capabilities. I understand the objection and disagree with its conclusion. The car wash test is not a measure of capability. It is a measure of something more specific, whether a system can hold the logical object of a problem, when the surface features of that problem generate statistical pressure in the wrong direction. 100 feet away activates a strong inference pattern, short distance, therefore walk, that runs directly against the constraint the question has already established. A system that can synthesize a legal brief, but cannot hold a 3-sentence problem together, hasn't demonstrated reasoning. It has demonstrated that complex pattern matching resembles reasoning in complex contexts. The failures are not random. They cluster. Every OpenAI model in this test failed across 3 product versions and 2 thinking configurations. I should be precise about that because one OpenAI model complicates the claim. GPT-03, which uses a different architecture, did reach the correct answer. I'll come back to 03 in a moment. Among the GPT architecture models, GPT 5.3, 5.4, and the Copilot deployments running those same models, the failure was total. 0 passes. Meta AI, running Llama 4, failed in both modes. Mistral failed in 2 out of 3 modes. What all the failures share is a common architecture of response. They identified a salient feature of the problem, distance. They activated the relevant inferential pattern, short distance, therefore walk. They produced confident prose in support of a conclusion the problem had already ruled out. This is not an intelligence failing, it is a fluent system succeeding at the wrong task. I want to dwell on one response, because it produced something beyond mere failure. That Copilot GPT 5.3 response, the one with the decision table and the irony rating, injected references to my Microsoft 365 work context. It mentioned my inventory model. It referenced printer costs at length. It offered to quantify how many different kinds of office supplies could be purchased if I'd save energy by walking. None of these concepts have any relationship to car washes. They are drawn from my workplace data, a separate context, a different domain, a set of concerns that belong to my professional life at the University of Pennsylvania. The system had searched my M365 data, found no entry for car wash, and concluded that whatever was in my M365 data might be usefully analogized to the problem at hand. It offered to calculate university energy savings based on my walking to a car wash. Specifics of my job function were surfaced into a conversation about a dirty car. No human in this exchange made the choice to bring my workplace into that question. The accountability traces to Microsoft, to the product decision that authorized Copilot to reach into M365 data and apply it speculatively to any query, whether or not the user invited that connection. I've written in earlier essays about the accountability gap that opens when virtual intelligence systems operate across institutional contexts. This is that gap made vivid. The system wasn't being helpful. It was producing outputs shaped by everything it could reach. Now let me tell you what passing looks like. Claude Opus 4.6 with extended thinking enabled. Drive. The car's the thing that needs washing, not you. Without extended thinking, drive. You're washing the car, not yourself. Claude Sonnet 4.6, the smaller model, with extended thinking. Drive. You're going to a car wash. Without it, drive. You're getting a car wash. The car needs to be there anyway. Grok 4.20 Expert, after 8 seconds of thought. Drive. Followed by a clean statement of its logic. If you walk, the car stays exactly where it started. Still dirty, still 100 feet away. Perplexity was the surprise of the whole set. It answered drive correctly with clean logic. Then it did something no other system managed. It identified the one genuinely plausible alternative reading of the prompt. It said, and I'm paraphrasing, if you meant whether to walk from where you parked to the entrance of the car wash, then walk. That is not hedging. That is the logical object held correctly twice. The failing systems didn't offer an alternative reading. They answered the wrong question confidently. Perplexity answered the right question, then noticed there was a second question worth answering. The Gemini models, all 3 tiers, Google's free browser product, also reached the correct answer, though none cleanly. Gemini 3 Fast opened with a joke. Are you looking for a clean car or a very impressive workout? Before confirming that drive was the right call. Gemini Pro dispensed with the humor, but added an unprompted offer to check the local weather forecast. Gemini Thinking arrived at the same destination via a table with a column headed Risk of Irony. They pass, but they are no points for precision. One finding from the later runs deserves particular attention because it complicates a narrative that the AI industry would prefer to keep simple, the idea that more thinking is always better. DeepSeek v3.2, a Chinese system, was tested with and without its extended reasoning mode called DeepThink. With DeepThink on, it displayed its reasoning chain, correctly identified the question as a trick, named the stakes, and arrived at drive. The thinking was good thinking, it just shouldn't have been necessary. With DeepThink off, the same model framed the question as, its words, a classic humorous riddle, and spent several sentences explaining the humor. Both runs reached the correct answer, both were verbose, and both passed. Now, compare that with Mistral Think, which I described earlier. 1 second of deliberation. Walk. It's just 100 feet. The thinking mode activated the wrong inference and locked it in. Same cognitive tool, a visible deliberation step. Opposite outcomes. DeepSync used the extra space to check its own inference. Mistral used it to commit to it. GPT-03, the OpenAI model built on a different architecture from the GPT series, presents the third variant. It reached the correct answer, drive, but then produced a comparison table, 4 numbered alternatives including 1 suggestion to push the car, and a closing restatement of what its first sentence had already said correctly. The answer survived, but the constraint did not hold the response. I scored it verbose rather than a clean pass. The asymmetry is the finding. Extended reasoning is not a solution. It is a tool, and what matters is what the system does with it. I am not arguing that passing this test constitutes intelligence. I am arguing something narrower, that passing it is a necessary condition for useful reasoning about a problem. A system generating fluent, confident, well-structured prose, while failing it, is demonstrating exactly the condition the virtual intelligence framework describes. The intelligence arises in the exchange between the user and the system, not inside the machine, which means it can fail in the exchange, and the failure will look like success until you check the answer. Each system that passed did so through the same move. It held the constraint. The car is the subject. The car needs to be at the car wash. Distance is irrelevant to the object of the problem. Each system that failed did so through the same move that released the constraint. It saw 100 feet and activated the pattern. Short distance, therefore walk. without checking whether the conclusion survived contact with the premise. Across 27 runs, 7 clean passes, 11 correct but verbose, 9 outright failures. The car, meanwhile, is still dirty. A brief note on methodology. 20 tests were run on March 22, 2026, and 7 more on March 28, using a single unmodified prompt in a fresh session with no prior context. The 12 systems tested were Claude in 3 model tiers, ChatGPT in 2 model versions, GPT-03, Meta AI's Llama 4, Gemini in 3 tiers, Grok in 2 modes, Microsoft Copilot running 3 different GPT models, DeepSeek v3.2, Mistral 3 in 3 modes, and Perplexity. Copilot and the ChatGPT variants share the same underlying GPT architecture, so their failures are not independent data points, but a single architectural failure with 2 deployment surfaces. Results were scored as pass, verbose, or fail, with no rubric applied beyond the logical object of the question. The car must be present at the car wash for the washing to occur. The full results, transcripts, and methodology are published in the written version of this essay at chorux.substack.com. That was the Car Wash Test, Virtual Intelligence in Action, part of the Virtual Intelligence series. You can read the full text with all footnotes, sources, and complete AI transcripts at chorux.substack.com. The series is free, and if you found this worth your time, I'd appreciate your subscription. The opinions expressed are my own, and do not reflect any official or unofficial institutional position of the University of Pennsylvania. I'm Christopher Horrocks. Thank you for listening.